My name is officially Dorothy Joan Durden, but I've been known as Joan all my life. So I'm far better known as Joan Durden than Dorothy. Born in Adelaide in 1922, it's 100 years ago. Oh, well, I was born as a twin. I was number one of two. That was a great surprise to everyone. That's why my mother had always chosen the name Dorothy for her firstborn girl, but there I was, but with a twin close behind me. So she had to think of two names, and in the long run they decided on my name being Dorothy Joan, but always known as Joan. And my twin sister was Patricia Margaret, and she was always known by that name. And so we grew up as children. Within less than 2 years there was a third member of the family, a sister called Eleanor, and 2 years later a brother called Ronald, and 4 years later again the last member of the family was Anne. And so we were a family of 5 virtually, growing up in Forestville, near Goodwood in Adelaide, and had a very happy home life. My father fortunately came back from the war with a good experience and work experience behind him before he went to the war, and the firm that he had been working with wanted him back again to take management of a trustee company. So he was very fortunate to have a job straight away, and so we were comfortably off in that sense, and they were able to buy their own home in the suburb of Forestville. When it came to schooling, my mother had the good fortune of attending a private school, and she rather wanted her children to have the same experience of a private school rather than the state system for education. And so she settled finally on MLC, Methodist Ladies College, mainly not because we were Methodist, because we weren't, but because it was convenient. We were very close to the tram line. We could walk to the tram, get on the tram, get off 3 stops later and walk to MLC. And we did that for every year of my schooling from the age of 6 to 17. Always wanted to be a teacher because my mother had been a teacher, and her own aunt, who was a very quite advanced for her own time, had inherited some money in her early grown-up period, and decided to buy a property in North Adelaide and develop her own school. And that was established in about 1900, and was doing well, but with the war, which interrupted straightforward enterprises of various kinds, it wasn't doing so well by the end of the war, and my aunt decided to close her school in 1920. In the meantime, her niece, my mother, Caroline, I don't think I've mentioned her by name, she had proved to her aunt that much as she loved her aunt and would like to succeed her in running a school, she had a man who wanted to marry her, and so that was a disappointment for the aunt's point of view, but mother was quite going to be happily married, as she was. And we 4 girls in the family all went to MLC because they'd started, for convenience, to really chose that school as one which was first nearby and had a good name for education. So I started as a 6-year-old at MLC and finished as in the Leaving Honours class, and ready to move on to a career then. By that time, all the way through my schooling, I anticipated, perhaps because of the history of aunt and mother as teachers, that my history would be in terms of school teaching. But when I applied to the Teachers College, at the end of 1939, the beginning of the war, the Teachers' College was reducing its intake of students and didn't have as many vacancies. It looked as though teaching was out for the moment. I was wanting to be a teacher, but I decided then, particularly when Pat said, it seemed that I couldn't be a teacher because the Teachers' College wouldn't take me. And Pat, who wanted to be a nurse, said, well, let's both be nurses. So we both trotted off to the matron of the Royal Adelaide Hospital and found that we could be, in due course of time, we couldn't be straight away accepted because we weren't quite old enough. We had to fill in a bit of time doing other things, but we both then began training in 1941 at the Royal Adelaide Hospital and completed our training in 1945. And as was customary then, newly graduated nurses usually wanted to flap their wings a bit and try and get more experiences in nursing. And so Pat did some children. She did 3 months at the Children's Hospital. I think I was a bit held up by sick leave or something, so we didn't do that together. But after that, we both went to Northfield Infectious Diseases Hospital and did a formal 6 months course in infectious diseases nursing. We really wanted to travel as well, and we really wanted to go to Melbourne to do our midwifery. So we both went to Melbourne and at the Queen Victoria Hospital, there, a big midwifery hospital, we both did our 9 months it was of midwifery training. And Pat was getting closer to the point where she could begin to do some extra things that would be helpful to her if she became, as she wanted to do in due course, become a missionary and work in with the Anglican Board of Mission in Papua New Guinea. And I didn't have that same desire for missionary activity, and so I went on picking up more certificates, including 3 months at a children's hospital in Sydney, and then wandering around Australia looking for jobs, and with an English girl who wanted a companion to wander around Australia with. She wanted to work with the Flying Doctor Service, but the nearest we could get to that was to get an appointment at the Longreach Hospital in Queensland. It wasn't a base for a flying doctor as it happened, and I don't think you could have got into it quite so easily. So we went to Queensland, and while I was working there, the matron from the Royal Adelaide Hospital, where I had done my general training, wrote to me and must have rung my mother to find out how to get in touch with me, I suppose, because I was a long way away from Adelaide. And she said that she wanted me to know that there was a scholarship being offered, funded by the Red Cross, but available to a nurse in South Australia to go to England to the Royal College of Nursing there and train as a nurse educator. And somehow that fell into my lap. I thought, well, you know, it's just what I'd love to do, but I didn't know I'd get there so easily. I had no doubt in my mind that I was in the right career, yes. And particularly when so relatively quickly I moved on from nursing, hands-on nursing, to teaching nurses. That was lovely because I was in England. I got a free holiday to Britain, really, and having that year of my life was a very fulfilling one, not only because I was following the career pathway that I wanted, but I was having all the opportunities of meeting friends and relatives and enjoying Britain and bits of Europe too on the way. So it was a very satisfactory few years for me. Now, people say, why didn't you marry? And I'd say, nobody asked me. I'm not ashamed of not being married. A lot of my friends are not married and have chosen to follow their careers as a single person, and it's never been never, not an issue, not a matter of advantage or disadvantage. And I went on with my teaching and was quite fulfilled in that way. I've written 4 books. I think I was just, as I was doing my own study of nursing, realising more and more that I didn't know much about the history of nursing anyway, and no one had ever written a history of nursing in South Australia. One book had been written as in association with the South Australia's was it bicentenary, or in 1936, and it was our centenary year, 1936, and I thought I'd write a history of nursing for that, but it took me much longer than the year of that centenary year, so I went on writing it. I didn't know quite how to. I knew that we needed to have some history of nursing written about South Australia, and nothing had been written in a formal way about a history book. They did in 1936 publish a book which was snippets of nursing right across the century, but it didn't make a readable, well-structured history, so I wanted to do something better than that. It sold out very quickly. Yes, well that was certainly a success. Well, in one sense, it's a matter of having been able to follow a path that I had been very vaguely aware of, but able to join in and be part of the development over quite a long period of time. Make the most of every opportunity to gain new knowledge and make sure that you're assessing the source of that knowledge and the authority of the people providing that information. When I decided that I needed to come up an hour, I came and talked to the manager, and she said she'd let me know when there was a vacancy. She even showed me round the floor, and I picked out this room at that stage. This was there were 2 rooms that she showed me which were going to be vacant soon, and I looked here and saw the view out the window, and I said, oh, put me down for that one. So I was very fortunate that when I did say, how about it, I'm ready to come, this room became fairly quickly available. And I knew it because one of my family members, my sister, had been nursed here, and I was fairly confident about that. I feel very much at home. I'm always very happy to show people where I am and what I can do here and so on.